What's going on, guys? It's illumiGnated, and I have decided to do a weekend-long marathon live stream fundraiser. So if I'm not eating a meal, or we're making thumbnails, or I have a few client calls to do, you know what I mean? Like when I don't have other obligations, I'm just going to continuously stream, and we're going to do different topics and music, hopefully. Although I'm a little bit low on energy at the moment, so I don't know about the music. And so before I get into the responding to hater comments from my comments, which you might say, you know, illumiGnated, why would you even give it energy? Isn't this a bit petty and ridiculous? I mean, I guess, you know, but it also could be funny, and maybe it could serve some kind of purpose to help me clarify my position on some stuff. I've noticed that people misunderstand me a lot because I think in our society, people generally just adopt narratives. And when you don't do that, but you have a piece of one of these narratives and someone hears you say it, they just make all these assumptions about you. Like the worst was in 2020 when I was speaking out against both Biden and Trump. But depending on which side you were on, people would hear me say something about Trump, and then they would be like, oh, you Biden-loving Democrat scumbag, whatever. And if I said, you know, the reverse, then the other people would get mad. So, and they would accuse me, you know, the Biden people would accuse me of being a Trump supporter. Even if it had nothing to do with Donald Trump, but was just like something that I was questioning about, you know, Biden, or if I took a position they associated with the right wing on something, I just noticed that, oh yeah, I knew it, you're a racist closet Trump supporter, you know, and it could have nothing to do with race at all. It was just something they associated with the right wing. So, you know, obviously that's not the kind of stuff you need to worry about defending yourself from. Because it's just crazy, you know. But I think, you know, one of the things that I really hope to accomplish with my channel is to just find those aspects of human behavior that kind of fly under the radar, maybe, and need to kind of be isolated and elucidated and pontificated upon, because, you know, people are batshit nuts, and a lot of people are confused about all of that, and so confronting it head on probably is worthy. So I'm going to try to use some of the comments. I'm going to use some specific comments, but mostly there are certain things that I get like consistently, you know, criticisms and accusations and stuff. By the way, you guys, don't forget to hit the like button, please. Demonetized channel, ignored by the algorithm, doesn't help us grow. That's a subject we're going to talk about. So let me talk real quick about this fundraiser. I don't want to get, you know, to burn up a bunch of time, and, you know, maybe even cross the line and start whining or something, or come off that way. But, we have just all this stuff all of a sudden that has hit us like a tidal wave. And one of those things, you know, we didn't volunteer for. It's really none of our business, but this community here, there are a shit ton of dogs. And we started feeding a few of them, and then it became, you know, more and more and more. And now I've noticed that they're starting to breed. And so I would like to spay and neuter all like 12 of them or whatever it is. You know, we're also putting a lot of time into removing botfly larvae from all these animals. And, you know, it's just kind of a weird position to be in, because it's not really our responsibility. We didn't volunteer for it, but they're here. And we don't really have the heart to not feed them. We don't have the heart to let them get eaten alive by botfly larvae. I've had one in my stomach. It hurts like hell. You know, if we leave them in the dogs, we hear them yelping and see them stumbling around. You can't do that. So, you know, and spaying and neutering them is like $60 a dog, even here in Ecuador. So, you know, $600. Like, I can't let them breed, because now I'm going to have to feed all the puppies. So it's like, I have to do it. And you might say, why don't you try to find homes for the dogs or whatever? But I'm in Ecuador. That's not really that realistic. They're not even our dogs. We don't really have the authority to give them away, because they're not ours, and that would piss the neighbors off, and we don't want that. So, oh, but wait, there's more. We bought a laptop because I needed better editing capabilities. I wanted to start making music, and we spent a bunch of money on it and got like the fastest one we could find, with the limitations of being in Ecuador. And it's a complete piece of shit. It can only handle like 2 or 3 plugins at a time if I'm trying to record. So I can't, like, you know, I can't put delay on the vocals and you know, some saturation on the guitar or whatever. Like I can't do anything with it. If you try to edit and add special effects, it just crashes. Like it's fucking trash. And we've taken it in to see if maybe there's a problem. No one can figure anything out, so I have to replace it. In order to do that, I have to go to keto. Like our light is blinking on and off for no reason. I got bitten by a bug. I'm trying to do this as fast as I can, but there are just so many reasons that I have to try to raise money right now. I got bitten by a kissing bug a few months ago, and I think I contracted Chagas, which will give me 3 to 10 years to live. My heart will slowly give out, basically. And when I got tested for it, they said that I had antibodies, but that I didn't test positive. And that confuses me, because if I never had Chagas, how is it that I have antibodies? And the thing is, the symptoms seem to still be getting worse and worse and worse. So on top of all this other crap, I feel like I need more testing and more treatment to deal with the Chagas. And another aspect of this is that we really want to get monetized. I feel like, you know, and a lot of you guys reflected this back to me, that my message on YouTube is actually, you know, important. It's something that needs to be out there. There aren't a lot of people that are saying a lot of the things that I'm saying. So, you know, it seems valuable to people out there in the community, and it looks like it's important to me. So we're trying to overcome demonetization, and I've just received a video, or I saw a video that someone sent me where they're saying that since YouTube is adding this paid promotion thing now, if you're not throwing money at it, you're going to get buried even worse. So I'm not trying to fail after, you know, 4 or 5 years of doing this. And then we also have been notified, because the septic is banked up here. We rented this entire lodge. We have to move unexpectedly for 2 months and then come back to do the retreat in November. So there's that. What else happened? Oh yeah, and I've been working as an affiliate for companies, so making videos and writing blogs and doing all this shit and actually spending money on promotion, and they're ghosting me when I ask about getting paid. All of them. All of them. So, you know, my mind is just a little bit blown at the moment that all of this stuff is happening at once. I'm sure I'm missing things too, you know. Oh yeah, and then this isn't like, you know, as important as the rest of it, but for our part of our retreat in November, I want to add a 4-night, 5-day trip to Cuballeno, which is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth, and for the simple reason that you know, as David Attenborough is so fond of telling people, you're not going to really be invested, and you're not going to really care until you see it for yourself. You're not going to try to do anything until you see it for yourself. So I do live in the rainforest, and there are monkeys around, and there's, you know, sloth, and there's, you know, there's animals here, but it's nothing like the deep, 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 deep primary rainforest. I mean, we saw everything. Like, you can pretty much just stand in one spot and kind of spin around, and you're like, all the animals are there. You know, anaconda, caiman, fucking all these different monkeys and sloth, and then there are like barely contacted indigenous people that you can go and like talk to and visit the shaman, drink ayahuasca with him very informally, which was really surprising to me because it's pretty heavily commercialized, but not in the way that Iquitos is. So that's another thing. This place does not have the kind of inundation of the influences of commercial ayahuasca that Iquitos in Peru has. So I feel like what we're offering here is a lot more valuable, and it's in the low end, you know, as far as the price spectrum goes. And we're in Ecuador. We're not in Peru. It's almost twice as expensive here. So a couple of people have said, like, well, you're charging almost as much as these other retreats. It's like, well, our overhead's twice as high, and we're in the low range. I don't know what you want from me. You know what I mean? So, but the point is, I have to rent the boat now, and I have to rent the entire thing because we don't want tourists in our boat running their mouths. I mean, we went before, and we shared a boat with some people, and they were nice, but they were drinking a lot. They wouldn't shut up. Like, we're going through the jungle looking for animals, and they're just blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? So we don't want that. So I have to rent the whole boat for like all 10 people, and it's going to be quite a lot of money, or I have to abandon that part of the mission because I can't do all this. It's just, there's just too much on my plate. Okay, so let's get into some of this hater shit, man. The first one, and the one that probably bothers me the most, is, you people will say like, you're supposed to be a spiritual leader and blah, 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 right? Or a spiritual teacher and blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to turn this light off. See what I mean, you guys? I have to travel 400 miles just to replace this light. Like, you know what I mean? There's no simple shit as far as like fixes go, in my world right now. So what, oh yeah, I forgot my guitars need work and I have to go 400 miles to do that too. What was I saying? Okay, yeah, you're a spiritual teacher and yet you're not vegan, or, you don't believe in God exactly, or, I don't even remember exactly the specificities of all of these criticisms, but I get this in some variation all the time. Show me where the fuck I ever said I was a spiritual teacher. Show me somewhere, any kind of indication. Like, why would you put a label on someone and criticize them for not living up to your own imagination? Like, it just, it's almost not even worth addressing, but I just wanted to point that out in case any of you guys are confused. I see myself as like a late era George Carlin or something, like kind of harsh, almost cynical, jaded social commentary. I do speak about metaphysical things, and I've had a lot of far out weird experiences that I share with people, and I think it's really important that you expand your consciousness, and that we try to understand that there is more to the universe than just blind inert matter, and that you don't have to have religious beliefs in order to have some kind of spiritual dimension to your life. So I guess if saying those things makes me a spiritual teacher, then I guess it's true. But I certainly don't feel like it's fair for people to put their own labels on me, create their own expectations, and what they think. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? What the hell even is that anyways? And then that leads me to another really common criticism that I get quite often, that actually really kind of gets under my skin, because I have met so many of these folks that were just so out of touch with reality and so hypocritical, and it has been so wildly consistent. And before I name them specifically, I want to mention that a lot of them are very good, well-meaning people, but most of the time they're completely delusional and very egoic and just head up their asses so far they can't see anything. It's difficult to communicate with your head up your ass. It's difficult to see stuff. But, people will say, well, how can you be an ayahuasca facilitator and not be vegan? I don't know whose batshit crazy idea this is, but there is not a tribe in the Amazon that is vegan that drinks ayahuasca. Not one single tribe. And most of them do not even have a dieta protocol. There's no avoiding meat. Somebody actually looked me dead in the eyes one time and said, my maestro has 5,000 years of lineage of eating the same diet of white rice and chicken. And I'm like, well, both of those things were introduced to South America 200 years ago. So that's, clearly bullshit. Everyone just got pissed at me. You know what I mean? For like calling this dude out. Like, that's just not realistic. In fact, the tribe that I learned in their way, they call it the Shuar way, would eat a monkey right before or after ayahuasca. It's just not real, first of all. And then I've also been attacked, like, how can you be an animal lover and just like pick and choose which animals you're going to eat and which ones you are going to, recognize as being sentient. Here's the thing, you guys. Single-celled slime mold in Japan out-engineered humans, the best engineers in Japan, working with the best computers they had at their disposal, navigating or creating a new subway system. Mycelium has been shown to be sentient. The basic fundamental truth here is life feeds on life. This is necessary. Life feeds on life, feeds on life. let the rabbits wear glasses. It's a reference to this hidden Tool on, I think, our track on Tool's second album, where basically this preacher is telling everyone that they need to save the carrots because the carrots, on harvest day, it's an apocalypse for them. Let the rabbits wear glasses and all of this kind of nonsense. And it's the same sort of thing. There is sentience everywhere. And it just seems unbelievably ironic to me that vegans that believe themselves to be more spiritual just because of their diet are not aware of the fundamental truths of spirituality. One of them being that life feeds on life and that everything creates its opposite, right? If you eat food, you create waste. If you have war, there are contrasting periods of peace. There's darkness and light. There's male and female. These things don't only have to coexist for us to understand them, but they literally create each other. There's no way around it except for dying or sitting down and meditating and doing nothing but breathing with total detachment for the rest of your life. And this isn't just my opinion. The Buddha said it. St. John of the Cross said it. The Buddha was telling people if you're going to avoid karma, you have to completely extricate yourself from the entire system. And what I'm talking about opposites creating each other, is that's exactly what he was saying. Even if you're doing good, you're creating evil somewhere else. It's something similar to the butterfly effect. But it's, one of the fundamental truths of Hermeticism, Aleister Crowley's work. St. John of the Cross recognized this, and he said, so should we sin that grace may come? God forbid. But isn't that what God himself did when he created Satan with the germ of his fall in him? And so there was no good answer. There isn't a good answer, And so, no, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that turkeys can, hug people and shit. And that, I've seen cows playing ball. I actually watched a deer the other day find a soccer ball and carefully, is it called dribbling in soccer? I don't know, kicking it little, controlled kicks back and forth. And then when it got to the net, it booted it into the goal and then did a fucking victory dance. I was like, oh my God. You got to be kidding me. There was a fish in Japan that this guy, it washed up somehow and he put it back in the water. And every time he goes to the pond, it jumps out of the water to hug him, for fuck's sake. But the reality is that the plants around you and maybe even the minerals would do the same thing if they could. They just happen to not move. They are sentient as well. You cannot avoid it unless you're going to die. So stop judging people. One of these vegans actually said to me, and I'm not even kidding about this. I took her to her first ayahuasca ceremony, and she said to me, I'm really surprised at how conscious you are for a meat eater. Can you imagine actually saying that to someone casually? Right? And so let's talk a little bit about what was going on in that vegan community. Should we talk about how normal it is to see vegan girls complaining about their psychotic ex stalking them that wouldn't violate the will of a bee by collecting its honey? Should we talk about that? Because I see it all the time. So where is this spiritual elevation, This fruitarian that was living at this vegan community, this is fucking amazing. This guy, basically, his superiority complex was so over the top. He wasn't eating fruitarian because he thought it was healthy. He was literally trying to be superior to everyone, right? Like, you guys at least are killing plants being vegan, but I am not killing anything because I only eat fruit. This guy was literally talking all this shit about how women were useless and black people couldn't do math. And, I'm sitting there going what about jazz, dude? What are you talking about? That's one of the most complicated fucking things anyone. Who is Neil deGrasse Tyson? You think he didn't do any math? What the fuck is this guy talking about? And I'm sitting here in this crowd of 20 people that are supposed to be elevated, higher consciousness vegans, that, I'm a fucking loser because I ate a hamburger or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm on a lower wavelength. And yet it was me that eventually stood up to all of these people and said, look at what the fuck you're doing here. And what happened finally is that and by the way, while I was eating there or living there, I had to agree to eat vegan because we're only going to be there for a couple of weeks while we're waiting for our other place to open up. And it was the worst I've felt in ever, maybe. I mean, it was terrible. I felt so hollow and empty, and it was awful. And weak and low energy and shit. I mean, it was really bad. Well, no, I did feel worse when I contracted Chagas, actually. That was absolutely terrible. But so listen to this shit. So this this guy is like, talking about, oh, what happened is the girl that had told me, I can't believe how conscious you are for a meat eater. She got combo at the ayahuasca ceremony in the morning, which comes from a frog. So she got back, and that guy that was the fruitarian that thought he was superior to everyone in the human race and was racist and sexist and all this shit, and he would sit there and run his mouth, and all these vegans would sit around like licking it up, eating it up, and blowing my fucking mind, all full of this superiority, and it was just like way too much. I don't know how I kept my mouth shut as long as I did, but we came back, and that dude flipped out on her. Like, how dare you put an animal product? They were going to kick her off into the street, out of the vegan property, into the street. And, you may say this is an isolated incident with a certain group of people, but guess what? There were 2 other vegan communities, and they were worse. So don't even give me that shit. The neighbors were fucking fucked up lunatics. It was unreal, and actually scary. The look on their eyes and shit was like Village of the Damned or something. They barely spoke. They were clearly miserable, super pale, like missing teeth, and it was pretty bad. And the other ones were armed to the teeth, which was a little bit smarter, at least. They had some sense, I guess. And they had built like a bridge they could chop down that went over the river so they could kind of isolate themselves, because these rivers you can't swim across them. And the Shuar are not real friendly to foreigners. They've showed up there with guns and beaten them up and stuff for trying to stop them from mining and hunting on their own land. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, we're vegans. You can't be killing the animals out here. It's like, dude, they've lived here 5,000 years. And you think you're going to show up and tell the Shuar they can't hunt on their own land? What the fuck? Jump down off your cross. We need the fucking space to nail the next idiot. Just what the hell? So this guy flips out on the girl for getting the combo. And I lost it. He ran up and got in my face, and I was like 2 flights of stairs up, and he was like, if I had hit him, he might have died. But I almost did, because I thought he was coming at me. Like I thought, man, he's really lost his mind. This little like 110-pound fruitarian's going to run up here and try to hit me or something. And it, from my point of view, it was self-defense, but I did. I almost punched him, and he would have fallen over the rails and down to his death probably. But I didn't, and I just stormed past him, and I went downstairs, and one of the last conversations we had been having was that that honey wasn't okay, even if you didn't harm the bees, because it disrespected the will of the bees who may not consent to the extraction of their honey from their hive. And that's when I finally was like, look at you stupid motherfuckers. Like, you have this guy sitting here 10 feet from where a black woman lives with her boyfriend, and I went off on him too, and like, where's your spine, dude? Like, you're just listening to this shit all day, and you're too passive to actually stick up for your girlfriend when this guy's talking about how black people are a lower order of human being, and women are useless, and children should be sold into slavery if they fucking agree to it. This guy actually was saying all this shit, and these vegans were like applauding almost. Right? But you can't take honey from a bee. It's like, listen to you idiots. You'll argue that the bee has the right to be absolutely undisturbed and happy. And yet your own community, you'll allow this fucking lunatic here to rant and rave racist and misogynistic shit 10 feet from a black woman. Like, what is happening here? And you think you're spiritually more elevated and the thing is about this, the reason it's so important is that it disproves the fact that vegans, just because of their diet, are somehow more spiritual than people that eat meat, right? No fucking way. No way. No way. In my general experience, they have less metacognition than normal, and there's, generally a whole lot of psychological stuff going on that just isn't quite right. So, my final word on that, because I know this has been a hell of a rant, is that dietary extremism is just as much of an indication of severe underlying mental health problems as any other type of extremism, right? If you're a normal, healthy person, you're probably going to be an omnivore. And if you really want to save the world, you're going to eat local and organic, but not necessarily vegetarian. That's not the point. The rainforest down here is dead. I mean, there's still some animals and there are some bugs, but I've been talking about this a lot, how I leave the doors open. Like right now, the doors are open, my lights are on. There should be like literally thousands of insects in here right now, right? I can go outside and sit in the evening and maybe swat a mosquito or two, right? That's why I'm so determined to get people to come down here. Because, you know, we need to take this more seriously and do something about it. But is it because of the cattle? No, it's because of pesticides from agriculture. So that's another thing. Like, if you think you're saving animals by being vegan, you're not at all. You're actually destroying entire ecosystems unless you are eating organic entirely, period, end of story. You are not saving any life at all. In fact, you're probably doing more damage. I know that overall cattle takes up more space, but the runoff from cattle does not necessarily destroy entire ecosystems like, you know, big ag does. So just all the way full of shit. I mean, that's, you know, I don't want to mince words because I don't care really that much about people's feelings. It's just, you know, it's just not real. And another thing that's interesting about it is that I've mentioned that, you know, have you guys considered any of these studies that tell you that veganism is a healthier option, may have been generated by big ag? And they're all of them that I've ever said this to are like, no way, the vegetable people wouldn't create propaganda. Only the meat people would do that, right? Because they're all high and vibrating on a higher level, and the meat people are all fucked up carnivore scumbags or whatever. You know what I mean? So the propaganda, that none of this information could be propaganda on our side because we're superior. We wouldn't do that. You know, and they were also trusting people in the community that were obviously dangerous. Like, you could go in there and not show ID, and like, just, you know, that guy that I was talking about that was super racist and misogynistic and his superiority, like, no doubt that he was a sociopath, a psychopath, and a narcissist. Like, for sure, all three of those things. And like, as blatant, more blatant than any human being I've ever seen. But because of their belief that vegans are like incapable of harming living things, these guys have got like psycho killers moving in with them, and they're not even questioning them because of their belief in this narrative that just eating vegan is enough to elevate you. And see, and if they have to question it and like face reality, then their whole ontology falls apart. So they're not really that inclined to realize that it's not fucking real. It just isn't. So, you know, I guess that's two of the really common criticisms I get. You know, and don't get me wrong, man, I'm not like judging anyone for their diet or whatever, but when I have to go down to a vegan's level in order to explain to them that it's not okay that they have like racist misogynists, and that they still think they're superior and refuse to even see it because of their belief that you know what I mean? Like, it's difficult not to get like angry or frustrated, I guess, in the face of that level of fucking lunacy, and to get attacked and insulted. And they're like, how can you say you're an animal lover? Dude, I got 10 dogs out there that are not mine that my wife mostly spends like 4 hours sometimes in a day, probably pulling maggots out of them because we live in the jungle, feeding them, right? Bathing them, taking them to the vet. They're not our dogs. Can any of these vegans that are criticizing me for, you know, being a hypocrite say that they're doing anything like that? You know? So, of course, it ruffles my feathers a little bit. Like, dude, come on. Like, just, I'm going to go eat some raw steak after this live stream. Sorry, I'm just trying to check in with the chat. By the way, if any of you guys hate me and you have any hateful comments that you would like to leave in the chat, this would be a good time because I'm responding to all that stuff now. Well, and then there's another one like people will say like, why is it that you think that you're like an authority on the truth? Or, you know, when I basically say that, like, you know, clearly all these religions are bunk, and they're not just bunk, but they're mostly actually evil, and they were literally designed to give the elites, I'm not talking about the modern elites, but like the fiefdoms and shit over history, the what do you call them, those guys in the Middle East that are not sheiks, but you know what I mean, those royalty, all those families in Europe, and that's what the religions were for. They were designed, Christianity was engineered to make the Palestinian tribes, or some of the tribes in that area at the time, more passive because they were trying to emulate this warrior messiah, and they were really problematic for them. And that was the main reason that they created Christianity, the Roman consulate. And the paperwork has been discovered, like it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. You know, Christ's, his entire ministry was based on the military campaign of Titus. It's the same places in the same order. All of his attributes are, you know, he's a there's a fucking word, composite myth, where, you know, you can trace all of it back to earlier characters. So there's no question about it. No question about it. So, you know, in response to that, I would say that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're egoic if you're just not stupid. And some things are just really obviously untrue, and it's really important that people come to see that. So, you know, I don't see... I guess what I could say about that is that it is difficult to ascertain the truth in this world, but it's usually a lot easier to figure out when things are just abjectly false. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to figure out when things just couldn't be true, and especially if you can answer cui bono, who benefits, and trace it back to people that would have been in a position to engineer the myths. I mean, you know, come on. But I do, I get a lot of that, like, you're going to hell, you know, Jesus, blah, 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 all this crap all the time. Yeah, so that's another one. I don't even want to bother with it too much, though, because it's a little bit, and then I guess, you know, people also say, like, how can you talk about Aleister Crowley so much, because he was all of these terrible things, and, you know, I don't really see it that way, because I don't know for sure what Crowley may or may not have done. All I know is that, you know, these experiences of gnosis that I had before I ever encountered Crowley's work were described and confirmed in ways that are just staggering in a lot of his books. And one of the things that I do with my music and what I try to do with my intellectual life and all of that is look for the absolute best of the best, cream of the crop, to combine together for my music, or, you know, the content for my videos, whatever. And Crowley's work represents that. There's no doubt that he was a bit of a bastard in real life, but I think this is also, like, it helps to illuminate I guess the fact that I think it's a fallacy that the belief that enlightenment means or indicates that a person is entirely good. I do not believe that we are in a sea of infinite love. I do not believe that at all. I think there is love, but there's obviously its opposite, and there's plenty of it. I think that what we are in a sea of is the full range of possible experiences. And that even though I don't really believe in God as like some being seated on a throne somewhere, directing events and individual lives and experiences, answering prayers, which would absolutely be impossible given the laws of the universe and the necessity that they're not violated, and free will and all of these things, there is some kind of intelligence. And I think that the universe is... this intelligence's way of experiencing itself in a very fundamental way. In fact, one of the directors of the Allen Institute for Brain Science, Neuroscience, believes panpsychism is true. I'm a little bit confused on how they recently have declared that they found a minimum requirement of like neuron patches for consciousness, when we know with absolute certainty that there is mycelium that is aware and slime molds that can out-engineer humans and computers, and also at least 5 fully functional human beings that have no brain at all whatsoever. I don't know how we can reconcile that information with this panpsychism. But that's the thing, you know, and if you are your own person, and this is really important, I feel like the concept of snowflakes, you know, that term might be thrown around to some people that don't deserve it, really. And we should be more sensitive and empathetic and accommodating of people's differences and all of that sort of stuff. But you should be capable of separating what is useful and what is not. When you encounter someone like Aleister Crowley that is like part dark and part light, But there's, things he might offer that you will not find literally anywhere else ever. You should have the knowledge of yourself to sort out what is useful to you and what is not. So that's why I really don't care. Separate the art from the artist. I'm not concerned with it. Yeah, sultans or whatever, sure. I'm not sure what paperwork you're talking about. Um, I wonder what about this. Like we were holding everybody for a minute, but I feel like I must have like hit a nerve and lost about a quarter of them. Oh, and another thing is like some of the positive criticism that I get is like I feel like if I took it, I would like lose my relevance because people will say like, well, you need to reach a larger audience, so why don't you stop saying things that will alienate certain demographics, and why don't you where you're going to lose money if you say certain things, why don't you avoid those topics? I think the value, if I have any value in the context of social media, it's the fact that I'm not limited by financial considerations when I choose topics or decide whether or not to say something. So I feel like, I understand why people say that a lot, but it would defeat the point. I would just be another person regurgitating the narrative that everyone else feels safe talking about and hearing. And what is the point in that? I don't understand. There would be no point. So I have to kind of keep an eye on the time because I have a client call in a little while. And I have another live stream. I think I have it scheduled for 6:00. And then I have a client call at 7:30, and then we're probably going to do music after that. Any opinion on lab-grown meat? Yeah, it's weird. But I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult for us to wrap our heads around fundamental science. And even though the idea of lab-grown meat kind of creeps me out, I think that it is totally possible that it's just the same exact structure of protein and whatever that, you know what I mean? I don't see why it wouldn't be possible to do that, and it might be fine. I think what we have to come to terms with is that our ancestors fucked up. They went way out of bounds, and we, even though it may not be our fault, we still have to make certain concessions to that reality. And so, sorry, I got to put my headphones on because I just started dumping and I can't hear myself speak. Yeah, so, I noticed that a lot of right-wingers are, like, really freaked out about the idea of eating bugs. Like, oh, they're going to make us all eat crickets and, whatever. And I kind of understand why they're, like, tripping out about that. But I happen to live in a country where eating bugs is totally normal. And the reality is that 80% of the people on this planet eat bugs. It's actually less common for cultures. Cultures that don't eat insects are the minority, not the majority. And it is true that we can produce a shit ton of protein without the environmental cost by raising bugs. Particularly like chantakuru grubs, crickets, I guess, are really easy. I ate a shit ton of cricket chips one time, and it really fucking did a number on my stomach. So jury's still out, but it had chickpea flour in it as well. So I'm not really sure what the culprit was. But I don't agree with that. That's one of the things I might be at odds with a lot of my right-wing peoples out there, is that I don't see anything wrong with eating bugs. And I think that we just have to man up and realize that we have to accept the fact that if we don't make some pretty serious changes that are, real and significant, we're all dead. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist, and I know a lot of people are very skeptical of global warming and all that kind of stuff, but I'm literally watching it with my own eyes here. I mean, the Amazon rainforest is almost completely devoid of insects, and it's happening so fast that it's just a matter of a couple of months between, you know, being able to leave the doors open at night with the lights on and not. A couple of months. You know, and also the variety of species that I see is much, much narrower than it was last year. Like, way fucking narrower. It used to be that, like, every day or two, if I went outside, I would see a new species of caterpillar or, you know, something. And that doesn't happen anymore. Ever. Like, ever. There's, like, 2 or 3 types left, and that's it. Like 4 or 5 species of butterfly. There used to be 400. We had the highest number of caterpillars and butterflies and moths in the entire world here in Ecuador. And it seems like even just in the last 6 months, I can count them on 2 hands. And then also the frogs are gone. It used to be that at night the jungle was loud, and now the jungle is eerily quiet at night. And this is a matter of just like 2 years. So, you know, if you're one of those people that feels like, you know, God gave us all the plants and animals to use and we have dominion over these motherfuckers and whatever, it's, you know, you're going to die because of that belief. And your kids are not going to inherit shit. And you know what I mean? It's going to have to come to terms with the fact that there is reality and it doesn't necessarily conform to your biases. And the problem with projection and selective perception and hardwiring a bunch of cognitive bias into your perception, your apparatus, your perception apparatus, gonna still suffer the consequences. You know, illusions will not protect you. So it's definitely something we need to take more seriously. That's one of the reasons I'm really encouraging people to come to the Amazon, come visit us. We still have space in July at our retreat. We have space in November. For those of you that are tuning in and might not have noticed, I am doing a marathon fundraiser. I'm going to be here until I get too tired to continue for the next couple of days, because we have to replace all of our equipment and we have to just do all this medical expenses and taking care of a jungle full of dogs and all this stuff. So I just thought, you know, I've heard of people raising the money to take care of all kinds of stuff by doing fundraisers on their channel, so I thought I'd give it a shot myself. Yeah, and so it is suddenly raining so hard that I'm probably not going to be able to continue until it slows down again. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. If you have any hateful comments, feel free to pop into the later live streams. And I'll be happy to address them. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, and if you would like to support us, there are options in the chat and in the description, and I will be back in about an hour with some stuff that ayahuasca told me about RFK and the trajectory of planet Earth. And although I'm always saying that it is important to take the stuff that we hear from plant spirits with a grain of salt, quite a large and heavy grain of salt, but a grain of salt nevertheless, you know, they still, in my experience, usually turn out to be true. So there's that. I'll see you guys in a bit. Thank you so much.